So today we are going to make 2 different types of bowls. So we're going to make one that I call a flat bottom bowl, which has, when you open it, it will be flat across the bottom initially, just like when we make our cylinders. We'll pull it straight, and then we'll throw these walls kind of straight up and down, and then you can flare them out however you want, the walls, later. But the other bowl, that second bowl we'll make, is what we call a round, a round bottom bowl. When we pull back, I will slowly raise up and leave more clay behind. Let me turn off the music. There's a little bit of music going off in the background. So when we open this bowl up, we'll leave some more clay behind as we go up, and it leaves like a round bottom. So for my family, like that could be a rice bowl or a ramen bowl, right? Have a really narrow round bottom like that. They're slightly different. We'll go through those twice. We'll talk about them like that. This is kind of like an in-betweener, right? It's not really flat, but it has a lot of the ideas of a flat bottom, but it's kind of rounded. You see still there at the bottom. All right, so let's go. For this assignment, you can start with a 2-pound ball of clay. So here I have wedged up a bigger blob, which is the way we would normally do it here, like this. Hey, and then here we go. And then this blob is 4 pounds here, right? So it's right around 4, so I'll rip this in half. And is it really important that you start with 2 pounds? Not really, but you need to start maybe with bowls. If you want a bigger chunk something, you got to start with more clay. So you see those are right around 2. That really is 2, even though you might not be able to see it, that needle. So I have 2 2-pound balls of clay now. I'll set them over there, and then we'll throw. And then we're going to talk about how we get these off of here as well. So here we'll start with this one. I'll do the flat bottom one first. So I make sure that's nice and clean, and I slap her down. You notice today I'm using the green bat. I'll talk about why in a minute. So here we go. We go like this, and we start squeezing like that. Let's back this away just a little bit so you guys can have a better ice. All right, here we go. So I just squeeze from the side, just like normal. So this may feel like a normal amount of clay to you guys, right? But it's really focused on the weight now. Like before, when we were making cylinders, we weren't really concentrating on weighing it too much. But if you make your 2-pound bowl out of your 2-pound ball of clay, and it's just too small, right? You just need to maybe start with a bigger chunk of clay, right? At home, you need to think about look at your bowls. Remember how last time we looked at cups? Like what kind of cups were you using at home, right? Think about also what kind of bowls you're using at home for what kinds of food you like to eat, right? So for me, just going back to cups, I don't really drink that much tea. I drink a lot of coffee, so I make coffee cups, right? And I really don't have that much preference about teacups, but where my wife drinks lots of tea, right? So if she wants a teacup, she kind of has to tell me what she wants, right? Same thing with bowls. If you eat a lot of spaghetti, you probably have a pretty good idea what a spaghetti bowl, what you want. And then you have a preference. Volume, right? Do you want everything in one bowl, like your whole sit-down meal, or are you okay having a smaller bowl that you would okay getting seconds, right? Again. So you have to think about that too. Portion size, right? So that would be portion size. So some people really want monster size portions, right? You just know some people that eat a lot. That could be you, right? Or you know people that don't eat much. You're kind of shocked at, oh, okay. You're kind of shocked at how little some people eat, right? And then they don't need a big bowl, right? So here, what did I just do? The only thing I did differently, I went through all the centering. I did push this down further, right? Ugh. Down like that for a second, like that. I had my hand on the outside while I pushed, while I was talking. So what did I do? I just created a wider, flatter mound. Why? Because this will be the bowl that I open up flat across, right? So let me get the right example. This will be the bowl that I open up flat like this across the bottom, and then I'll raise up a wall. So proportionately, compared to a cup, it is shorter and squattier and wider, right, than a cup. So my initial mound here can be squattier, shorter, wider, right? And then this walls will come up straight up out here. So my mound starts wider, right? And I did that by pushing down here and down, and then I have my outside hand here controlling the outside a little bit, so they push together like that, push straight down here. And this clay is reclaimed clay today because that's what I had available, right? And then it's really soft, so that's good for this. So then when I same deal though, now let's get in super close for this because we'll get in, because we can. I love it when we do that. So then we just go down, just like normal, down, and remember, stop. Super critical that we leave, how much thickness were we leaving before? Pinky width thickness. You can even leave a little bit more now, because as things get bigger and wider, you can trim bigger feet on there. It looks okay to have a chunkier foot on there. So here, I'll do that, and then I'll check my depth, bloop, like that, and I pull this out, whoop, and I do that, and I look, okay, oh, but John Hasegawa actually left less than pinky. So, so actually this is a good teaching moment. What happens if you're just a little bit less than pinky, right? Just like that much. One little trick we can do is, instead of going all the way down to the bottom and pulling back, instead I'll raise up a little bit and pull straight back from there, right? So I'll leave a little shallow spot in the middle, but I'll be up just a smidgen as I pull back. So the very middle that I left, where it is, a stab it down, where it is that thick, right, ooh, it's not that thin. Where it's that thick right there, I'll be raising just a little bit higher. I'll be opening and doing my wine just a little bit higher. And I'll explain why here in a second. So here, as I pull back, you will see that I'm leaving a very, let me now just remove some, I didn't bring a sponge. That's a little crazy. I know I threw a sponge out here, but it is gone. Oh, nope, that's not it. So here, I'll show you what I just did here. I'll remove some water. See, there's a little bit of a shallow spot right there, and I'm raising up. So my hope is that when I go back to smooth this out later, right? Oh, this is a little chunk of clay. Sometimes this little wave of clay happens. So I'll take that wave of clay and push that back down like that. And then I'll keep transitioning to opening. Woohoo! You see that? So I'm really focusing on trying to make this flat. So I'm almost to the outside edge. You see that? Ooh, there I am. Right, I don't want to go any further than that. Now, we haven't talked about compressing the bottom. I know that's a thing that people talk about. So today we're going to talk about it. It's important that we clean up this bottom and compress it, because it shall be open for all the world to see, right? Where a cup, it's kind of buried down in the cylinder a little bit, right? So we're going to take some time. Remember, we did this where we flattened out our three fingers, or our index, middle, and then ring finger. We made them flat like that. We held that like this, and then from this side of the wheel over, we just go bloop like that. We spend some time doing that on the side that's spinning away. So that helps smooth it out some, right, like that. And I move it back and forth. It would ideally be a flat, smooth surface. And then just by doing that, the clay kind of here in the very, very, very middle kind of fills in a little bit. That's the hope, at least. And then I can even come by and use the rubber rib on the side that's spinning away like this, and just go like that. You see that? I lay it down pretty low, and I just do this, and that's also what we call compressing the bottom, like that. And that helps remove some of the slip there. Being very careful that I don't cross over the middle, right? Because if I cross over onto the far side, that clay will start digging, this rib will start digging into there. That wouldn't be good. All right, so that was compression of the bottom. That should be pretty easy. Right, now we go to throwing, right, raising the wall. So just like a cylinder, we make kind of a cylinder here, except for this cylinder, we want to flare it out. So what does that mean when we mean by, what does John mean by saying flare it out? So cylinder, we normally, when we throw, we try to go straight up like that, right, try to raise it straight up. This time when we raise, we throw, we're going to try to let the cylinder flare out. So instead, I'm going to go this way a little bit. right? You see that? We'll try to go outward. So with a cylinder, we were battling that the whole time, trying to make a cylinder. And some of it, cylinder naturally just flares. For bowls, we actually want it to flare out now, start flaring out. So I wet this down, and I do the same hand position as if I'm doing a cylinder, right? That cylinder hand position locked together. Except this time now, since I'm gonna let it flare outward, I kind of roll my whole position downward. And then because the wall is going to be heading this way out and away from the middle. So cylinder straight up, I keep the same hand position, I just roll that down and then I come out. So here we go. So here, instead of straight up, I roll it over a little bit like that. And then it probably feels like you're going to be pushing more from the inside, and I raise it like that. See that? And I slowly let go just like I would normally. So you see how it's already starting to be a bowl, which is good. I wet it down again. Now, as this gets wider and wider, watch your wheel speed, because the wideness of the clay and the amount of clay, the more clay you have that start with, and the wider the clay gets, means you have to slow your wheel speed down a little bit. So this is pretty soft clay, so I only get really one more chance at the raise. I can already feel it getting kind of weak. So here I'm going to push. Here we go. So you see I'm really slowing it down. There we go, right? Now, this is not the shape of the bowl that I have to live with, right? I can now kind of, if there's any water on the inside, excuse me. I was eating carrots right before, and you know those little chunks of carrot just float around your mouth for a while. So here, it's a bowl. I could stop here and be super excited, but we have to think about what we want this bowl to be used for. Right now, it's a kind of a great all-around bowl, right? It's pretty straight up and down, relative. Let's look at the side view, right? It's relatively straight up and down, right? So it would be great for things that slosh around, like a soup, right? That have lots of liquid. But if I want to put like a banana in there, it's not going to fit. Like if you want to make it a fruit bowl or something, right? And so there's other things that we can do. Remember that we know this now, that clay loves to stretch outward, right? And doesn't really like to go back in. We learned that with pinch pots. So with we can stretch it out some, and we'll note that the bowl, what we can use the bowl for, or what the potential is, changes. And a little bit of change means a lot here, right? So it's still basically, the principle of making it is very cylinder-like, meaning we still want even wall thickness all the way down, right? From the rim all the way down to there, as far down as we can go. In general, near the bottom down here of the wall of the bowl gets a little thicker. It's just supernatural, right? But if you can make a good cylinder, then you should be able to make a good bowl, right? As far as the basics. So now here, I'm going to take this rib and start pushing here from the outside, from the inside out on the right-hand side of the wheel, like that. And we'll go back to here, and then we'll watch the shape of the bowl change as I do this work, right? So here we go. Here, use this on this side, and I can push out. Now, there we go. Slowly, 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 slowly. And I go down to about, right about here on this. Let's go from the top down, right about to there, right where the floor meets the wall. So here, when I'm pushing out, let's just use this example here, since we're doing a flat bottom bowl. I'm pushing, 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 pushing down to about there. Right? Pushing, 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 pushing down about there. This bowl, though, is more flared outward, so it's actually more like this bowl here, right? I'm using the rib, pushing, 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 pushing down to about there. I'm letting that, you see how actually I did that with this one? You see how beautifully that rib kind of fits into there, right? And so that allows me to create this shape. Now you see that we're looking at the bowl from the side view with this camera right here, right? But really I'm only looking at the inside. The inside is the most important. So let's raise this up, because I want to create a beautiful inside, and then next class we will trim the outside. So the focus is on the inside. So this is a little bit different than cups. Remember, on cups we were pushing and we were just watching the shape on the outside. For bowls, we're really watching the form, the volume, what it looks like on the inside, and then later on we will deal with the outside. right? So if you make this beautiful, a nice, beautiful curve on the inside, or whatever you think it's going to be good for, right? Then you will match that shape when you trim it on the outside. So if this is working on the inside, you never have to look at the outside because you'll fix the outside later. All right, so I did a few pretty gentle pushes, so let's do something more aggressive. So we're really going to change it because the bowl is still kind of the same as it was before. So let's really work on laying this out. So I'm going to be much more aggressive with this push. I always start at the top and then work my way down toward the middle, right? So here we go. Now I am touching it from the outside, but I'm not really pushing back from the outside. It's just like riding along, feeling it. Why? Because if the bowl begins to shift and one side begins to collapse, I'll be able to feel it almost immediately, right? Because right now it's centered, so my fingers are just running along the outside. But usually when you push it, if something starts to collapse, it'll happen one side over the other, and then I'll feel my fingers like oscillating, my outside fingers. So my outside fingers are just along for the ride here tonight. And then let's push more aggressively. So like that. You see how aggressive I'm being? I'm really pushing it out. It's not really that much effort. And you see how now that has gotten much more wider. Let's do one more time. I think it can handle that. Am I saying that you have to make them this wide? No, I'm just showing you the potential, right, for that. There. Yeah, right, it's transformed. So before, the utility bowl, like if you want to make scrambled eggs in the morning, you could have cracked some eggs into the older bowl and like, so bowls with more vertical sides, less chance of spillage, right? This one, as it opens, right, not as great a bowl for soup or something, right? The other bowl, you could have kind of drank something out of it even, right? At the end of the soup, you can drink it. This one, as it gets wider and flatter and more open, it loses that opportunity, right? Oh yeah, so anything where you need to get in there, like dry, goopy stuff or pasta or something, right? And then so you got to think about the bowl that you need to use, just like how we talked about like their cups for like hot chocolate, cups for tea, cups for juice, right? So what did I just do there? I'm fixing the transition now because I was doing this a lot, going down the wall a lot. Now I'm fixing the transition here, just fixing at the bottom to make it look a little better, right? There we go. All right, so I feel like I'm done. Let's trim the rim. So a lot of times your rim doesn't look good. So for the rim on a regular cylinder, right, we go from the outside. But if you look here, what's in the way is to cut this off. It's really awkward because I have my splash pan in the way. And the rim is like really laid down, right? It's kind of flaring out. So we always kind of want, so for these kind of rims, you may have to practice, right? You could also use the wire tool trick where you use this guy here. Remember we'll do one with a wire tool today, one this way, we just drop it. Oh, since I'm there, let's just do it with a wire, right? So I know that some people like that. So you hold the wire taut and I just will hold it since it's at this angle here, right? It's flaring out. Let's bring this down so you guys can see it. It's all right. Bad, covered up the camera with my thumb, right? So here, since this is going out, the bowl, the rim is going out at that angle, I'll hold this at the corresponding opposite angle. Do you see that? So, because if I try to just cut it flat like that, I'll end up with a really sharp point ridge on the outside of that. So instead of cutting it off flat like we did cylinders, I will cut it off at that angle there. So here we go. Boom. And I hold it at the same level till it's gone once around there, and then I can lift that off. Woo! Right? So for that bowl, I probably didn't need to cut it off, right? Because it was close to even. But for most of us, especially as beginner students, you need to cut it off just to make it round and even. And you see how beautiful that edge is now. You see, but it's really sharp and sharp. So you do the same thing. I should have soaked my chamois earlier. So then you need to add some water to that, get that edge wet again. And then I'll take my chamois. We talked about this last time, man, this chamois is really dry. I need to open this chamois up. I should have had it soaking in the water the whole time, John. Right there, that'll fix it. All right, so then I just make an upward loop, right, with the chamois like that. Like that. And then I use that loop. I put a little bit of downward pressure and just a smidge right? Just let that chamois ride, and you make that rim look nice and beautiful and full, right? And then some clay sometimes gets in there, so I'm gonna smooth that edge out there. Oh, look how awesome that is. I'm super excited. Now, why do you need to do that? Because we were talking about cups, we need to do it. This is the same thing. You don't know if someone later is going to be drinking out of it, like somebody's going to try to drink something out of it. Undercutting, let's talk about undercutting. This is really difficult for me to get in there and undercut. So instead of undercutting it so drastically, I'm just gonna lay this guy flat like that. So see, that's flat, my thing. But you see how as it gets closer, the top of this might hit the bowl. So I'm just gonna hold this down, I'm gonna lay it down. You see, I just twisted it down to give it more clearance. And I will just use the tip of that to undercut right there. You see that? And that's all I need, because then I'm going to use the wire tool to slide under there. You see that? Let the wire catch. So this is a good example of why we want the undercut. So now the wire is driving down against the bat. I will slide this across like that. Woohoo! Right now, what do we do with this? We need to back this away tremendously so that we can see multiple things. How do we get this off the bat? Well, we have these things called pot lifters. I think that's the actual real name for them. They are over there above the needle tools. We don't have enough for everybody to have all at once, but you'll see that they look like this. So you need to wet them down really good. If you don't wet them down ahead of time, they won't work. You'll see why in a second. You need to get the place where you're taking it to nearby. Maybe this will be a better one to do this with. Let's raise this one up. Give me a second. Oh, maybe we can raise it up this way. Oh yeah, that'll work. Because we just need to see both fields. We just need to see both things at the same time. Oop. And then we'll go this. There. So then what we're going to do here is bring that closer. We use these, so I'll re-wet them down because they need to be re-wet down. Then what's going to happen is I take these guys and I slide them underneath the pot, holding them flat against the bat, right? They slide underneath the pot, flat against the pot. The base of the pot needs to be captured along the outside portion of this, right? So I hold them flat, and then let's go side view. I hold them flat, they go under the pot, and then I lift the pot up, and I bring it over to where my thing is, and I put it on my board, and then I slide it out like that, and it stays on the board. It's pretty cool. You could do this with just about anything, but bowls absolutely need to, because the other technique where we just kind of friction lifted them off doesn't really work. This will just start the taco together, right? Because there's so much base, it's so wide, there's no structure there. No good structure. So let's do it this way. So I need to wet these down ahead of time. If you have a big blue bucket, you should just dip the tips of these in water, right? And see, this doesn't work so well, so I have to wet them down right before I use them. You have to make sure you have wired that off. Maybe we can get both. Let's back that off. Maybe this is the better view anyways. So here, right? And then I slide them under, right? I get them flat against the bat. You guys see that? Flat against the bat. I get it underneath, right? So it's against the bat, underneath the thing. And then when I lift, it's better if I do a little bit of twisty action sometimes, or sometimes you can lift it straight off, but I like to do a little twisted lift in space, just a little bit. And now since we're about to lift it, we'll pull it back there. We'll do it there so you can see the board. So I twist and lift, and you see now it's off, and then I just need to hold it flat, right, as I bring it over to the board, right? We'll bring it over to the board, and then we'll do this better in camera. So back over here. Now it's resting partially on the board and partially on these guys, right? These guys are in between. But remember, I wet these guys down ahead of time. So whoop, they should slide out. Usually they do. And see, transferred. Woo! Now, if you have, so there, and then that's number one. Now, you can see that it ovalized a little bit, right? You can see that it seems a little longer that way than that way. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and just pick up those edges a little bit to see if I can re-round them. That looks better. Cheat a little bit, re-round them. All right, good. So now we'll make another one. So we'll make a round bottom bowl. Let's do it. So there's lots of clay left here. I could just slap this guy right down on the clay, no problem. So let's get this back in the middle. All right. Oh, but I missed. So wedge that in there. So this time it'll be a round bottom bowl, right? Here we go. Let's bring that closer, get reset here. And so who uses a round bottom bowl? I mean, I gave some examples. Do you guys, does anyone use a round bottom bowl in their daily life, right? There's a use for it, right? Yeah, sometimes your cereal bowl, right? The rice bowl, the Japanese rice bowl is rounded on the bottom because they use chopsticks, right? And so chopsticks, it's hard to get the last bits of rice out. So that round bottom bowl, right, because it's so tight, you ever looked at the Japanese rice bowl? It has a very tight curve in the bottom. With the chopsticks, you're just, as you're eating, you're sweeping it into that little space, and the rice, since it's sticky, the last chunks of rice will clump together. And then, whoop, it's easy to scoop up, right? And so it naturally, gravity naturally wants to pull them into the bottom round area. So here we go, just like regular centering. So here, we're gonna push this back down. So in general, the rice bowls, the round bottom bowls can be slightly taller mound, right? So you can see here that I'm starting with a slightly taller mound here, right? That's okay. For this, I'm starting with the same amount of clay. I'm just go down like normal, boo, down like that. And then I'll check my thickness. I think I'm a little gun shy, so I left a little bit more thickness. That's good. So now the trick is when I start opening, I don't open flat. As I open, I start to raise up like that. That makes sense? So I'll raise up and leave more clay behind as I raise up. So you'll watch me do it. I'll rig it really kind of, ooh, let's bring this closer so you can even see better, right? This is as close as this one can go, right? So as I raise up, I will slowly leave more clay behind. So I'm purposely making that the thinnest spot and then raising this up as I go. That will be the start of this curve here, right? And you can open up flat for a little bit if you want to and then start raising, or you can start raising up immediately. How do you know? You just got to make a few to figure out the curve that you know that you think you want. Was that right? So you see that now, you see that shallow, thicker, 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 thicker. So I'm establishing the curve of the bowl already. Overall, this is a little bit more what I would call not as efficient use of clay, because you do need to leave extra clay behind over here that you need to trim away later, right? Where the other one, you don't. So I'm gonna just use the same technique of just smoothing that out a little just to get a good look at it. I'm pretty happy with that. That looks like a nice, beautiful curve. And then up here, right, I don't get to start with, normally when we do our raising passes, we start way down here, right, to raise. But you see that if I start way down here, my inside hand will be so much higher, right? So we just got to cheat the outside hand up, and we don't really get a push at the base. We have to push. We want the same hand position that we would normally use, right, for raising. So that means the outside hand starts off the bat, right? Where before we're way down at the bat usually. We're off the bat, and then we're using the same raising technique that we would use for a bowl, that we use on the last bowl, where we just tip this whole operation over, right? And we throw out and away, right, from the bowl. So here we go. Here, push, go up and out, and it feels like, to me, like I'm pushing harder from the inside, right? Because I needed to start establishing that bowl shape. I'll wet it down again, wet it down again, wet it down again. Now, there are all sorts of techniques for coming back down here and grabbing that clay. Like I can that clay in and try to, but for us, let's not do that. That's some, right? As beginners, right? We've only been throwing for a couple of weeks. Let's not do that. Let's just go like this and raise up, right, like that, and then, ooh, baby, right? And I know that it doesn't have to be exactly right now, because remember, we're going to come back with the rib and shape it a little bit later. But it's probably best if it is up too high. What do I mean by raised? Like that I have to stretch it out, right? That it's too much this way, too much vertical and not out enough. Because remember, we can now use magical rib and we can push it out to the shape that we want. For this clay, it's pretty soft. It doesn't matter. But I like the green or the yellow for this. The red's a little soft, but if the red's all I had, that's what I would use. So I use this part of the rib, and I kind of start pushing down and out, right? And I go down, there. Now, once I get to about this part here, right? This part is part that's supported by the clay. On the outside, I have to push harder to make that curve move. Up here, this clay moves really easily. Like, you see how easily that clay moves, right? Right here, where the clay transitions into being supported, I have to actually push harder there as I go across. But you don't want to start pushing harder earlier, because that clay here right above that will sag downward. You'll get this funny awkward trough there. So here we go. I'll do it again. So I'm being very gentle, very gentle, very gentle, very gentle, very gentle. And somewhere around here where that part of the rib starts transitioning over, I know I can have to push a little harder to get that shape to change. Now I'm making a push all the way close to the middle. Let's go here, right? And so what am I doing? Just like the other bowl, I'm really focused on the inside shape. Look how beautiful that's starting to look, right? And then I'll trim the outside shape to match. And I'm thinking, John, what can I use this for, right? So right now it'd be good for lots of things, right? And let's really lay it out this time. Remember, we did that. So let's really push it out, and we'll really change what the bowl can be used for, right? So I'm really pushing out the bowl, right? And then once again, that changes, and then I'm transitioning now into that part where it's supported from the outside, from the bottom. So I know I have to push harder once I get there, right? And now you look how I'm using the rib. I'm trying to use that whole curve, because I know that curve looks beautiful, and I know that that bowl probably is going to have a curve through it, right? That makes sense. So I'm using that curve, sweep off some of that clay to create that good looking thing. Now, if you have a smaller bowl, right, if you're making a smaller bowl, this curve won't work. You have to get a smaller rib, right? We have some smaller ones. So I'm feeling good, but you see how that's a little different now. I wonder if I could push it out again, maybe. Let's try it one more time, and let's push it out, just to show you that you can keep doing that here. So I'm really hammering on this. Right now, for me, I would have started this much flatter from the inside when I was raising up, but right, because if I really wanted a bowl that was this open, I would have opened it up much flatter, because it took a lot of work for me to kind of get to this point, right? All right, so we're getting there. We're almost there. We're almost there. So I'm feeling pretty groovy about that, right? I see I'm spending some time just making sure it looks good. All right, so let's do that's my bowl, right? It has this nice curve, beautiful, right? It's a couple pounds of clay. So let's say you got to the bowl stage. Let's say you started with your 2 pounds, but then your bowl looks good, but it's just not big enough. Just start with more clay. You weighed out your 2 pound ball of clay as a starting point. Start then, if your bowl is too small, which happens a lot, start with 2.5 pounds of clay, or 3 pounds of clay. Right, so let's do the thing where we cut off the rim. When we cut off the rim here, we'll use my left hand, because I can't get in there and cut this way, because the everything, all this other splash pan and stuff is in the way. So I will cut it off this way, like this, from the inside. So I hold it like a pencil with my left hand. I touch my right hand. I run here. It's just like before. Ooh, I'm drifting. There we go. There, and that's the way I cut. The wire, though, is much faster and more aggressive. And then I wet it down, and then I'll chamois it. And then we'll show you a different way of getting this off. I would recommend the pot grabbers, but just for fun's sake, we're going to show you a different way of lifting this off. Right, so we do the same thing here. That really makes that edge look beautiful, like that. Now, because this is a round bottom bowl and it has a lot of clay down here supporting it, I can do this little trick here. Well, let's first undercut it some, because in order to lift it off, the way I'm going to show you, I have to undercut it pretty aggressively. Now, what does undercutting do? Well, I want to remove a lot of that clay anyways through trimming, so undercutting it now really helps it out, right? Where if I can remove some excess clay. And I picked like the worst clay knife they have over there. And the shape. This is like the chubby, short one. Like the worst one for doing what I just did. I'm gonna wire it off. Like that. And then we'll go back to a bigger view, super wide. So what I'm gonna do with this one is you'll see people that, especially in China, I saw some people doing this where they'll take chopsticks, 2 chopsticks, and just stick them underneath and lift them, because I've made that overhang there underneath. I can jam my fingers underneath. And because the clay, right, gets thicker, there's more support. There's less chance of the bowl, like what I call tacoing, right, folding in half. So what I'm gonna do with this one is I could still use the pot lifters for this. What I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to use my fingers like this underneath, right? You have to watch on that. So I spread them out. I go way down here and I jam them in and I lift it off like that. You see that? And then I can plop it over like that. Now, I assume everyone's just going to use the pot lifters for doing that. Is there a requirement that you need to do a flat bottom or round bottom? No. Right? It's just look at the size requirement on the sheet, right? You make whatever. I just wanted to show you 2 different types because I love my round bottom bowls at home, right? Any questions about that, what we just showed you? Other than make some? Okay, so yeah, other than make some.